It started with a smile, not just any smile, but the kind that's been studied, polished, and perfected in front of cameras. A smile meant to disarm, to charm, and maybe even to manipulate. When Meghan Markle invited billionaire Jamie Kern Lima onto her podcast, it looked like a dream collab. Two powerful women bonded by resilience, ready to share their truths with the world. But the truth? Well, the real truth didn't come out on that podcast. It came months later, when Jamie picked up the mic herself and said, "That wasn't real." And from that moment on, Meghan's empire began to crack, one confession at a time. On the surface, Meghan's interview with Jamie was everything it was meant to be: emotional, vulnerable, even tear-jerking. The Duchess opened up. Jamie opened up. Viewers leaned in. But what if it was all an act? According to Jamie, what looked like a heartfelt dialogue was actually a production. Meghan's team had mapped out the entire episode, scripted talking points, pre-selected topics, emotional beats, even camera angles to it. It wasn't an organic conversation. It was a show, a performance. And Jamie, unknowingly, had been cast in it. And the wildest part? No one knew. Not at first, not the audience, not the media, not even Jamie, until the cameras stopped rolling. Jamie described it like someone flipping a switch. The moment the recording ended, Meghan dropped the softness, the subtle vulnerability, the quiet tone. She transformed from the wounded Duchess into a sharp, direct, and borderline cold executive. All business, all control. The emotional air vanished, like it had never been there at all. The woman who had just tearfully shared her truth wasn't there anymore. And that moment stuck with Jamie. It gnawed at her for weeks, then months, because the contrast was just too jarring. Fast forward several months. Jamie, now sitting in front of her own mic, made a decision that would change everything. She exposed it all, on record. She didn't name drop in a tabloid. She didn't leak DMS to a blogger. She didn't throw subtle shade in an interview. She owned it, straight into the mic. Every pause, every tear, every listen was scripted. She said she kept quiet at first to avoid drama. But when fans started reaching out, saying how deeply they were touched by Meghan's realness, that was the last straw. Jamie knew she couldn't stay silent. Not when the version of Meghan people were admiring didn't even exist. The backlash was immediate. Social media lit up. TikTok clips, YouTube reactions, tweets that racked up thousands of shares in minutes. I defended Meghan for years. Now I feel played. The sentiment wasn't pure outrage, it was disappointment, a deep sense of betrayal, the realization that the woman many saw as a brave truth teller might have been playing a role all along. Meanwhile, Meghan's team was scrambling. Reports said she was livid, pacing back and forth, yelling at staff, demanding that Jamie's episode be pulled down, that a retraction be issued. But Jamie? She didn't back down. In fact, she promised more. The mic drop moment came when Jamie calmly told her listeners, "This isn't about tearing someone down, it's about the truth. And I still have the tapes." That sentence hit like a tidal wave. Suddenly, this wasn't speculation. This was potential evidence. Raw, unedited audio, behind-the-scenes moments, even footage that showed the shift in Meghan's demeanor. And just like that, the story went from scandal to brand crisis. In the hours and days after Jamie's podcast dropped, the impact spread far beyond gossip blogs. PR firms in Beverly Hills started whispering. Brands asked their reps, "Can we still trust her?" Meghan's name began disappearing from boardroom conversations. One high-end fashion house reportedly paused a campaign that featured her as a brand ambassador. And it wasn't just PR buzz. It was a shift in public confidence. Because when someone builds their image on being raw and honest, and that honesty is proven false, that's not just embarrassing, that's devastating. What made it worse? This wasn't a one-off. Once people started rewatching old footage, listening to old podcast episodes, rereading interviews, the pattern emerged. The Spotify deal that fizzled after just one season, the Netflix doc that underperformed, the empowerment messaging that seemed to shift with each project, the emotional Oprah interview, now under new scrutiny. Each moment felt curated, too curated. Every reinvention, every new identity, from royal outcast to mental health advocate to faith-based lifestyle guru, came with its own branding. And now, people saw it not as growth, but as strategy. Perhaps the most telling moment came when Oprah herself went silent. The woman who had given Meghan a global stage to share her truth, who had stood by her through the royal fallout, offered no public support, no tweets, no interviews, nothing. Behind the scenes, sources claimed Oprah's team was furious that they felt used, that the emotional interview they produced might not have been as raw as it seemed. If Meghan had fooled Oprah, then who hadn't she fooled? Meghan's defenders, once vocal, loyal, unshakable, began to go quiet. Some issued vague, no-comment replies. Others ghosted entirely. A few even quietly distanced themselves from her on social media. One former collaborator told Variety, "The vibe now is, don't get dragged into it. Keep your name away from hers." And when your inner circle starts to shrink like that, you're not just losing support, you're losing protection. Let's talk dollars. Meghan's foundation, Archewell, was built as a brand of hope, healing, and impact. But with her personal credibility in question, even that took a hit. Donors reportedly started asking questions. Sponsors began pulling back. A few paused funding altogether. And when your charity's power depends on your public image, damage to one means damage to both. Brands like Dior and Netflix, once confident in Meghan's star power, now faced a new question. Is the risk worth the reward? Perhaps the most chilling insight came from those who had worked with Meghan behind closed doors. One Netflix editor described her as obsessed with controlling every frame. Another said, it was like editing a documentary where the subject thinks they're the director. Everything, every look, every soundbite, every scene was filtered through Meghan's lens of control. And that's when the public began asking, if nothing is real, then who is Meghan Markle? As the firestorm grows, Meghan has remained publicly silent. But insiders say the team is in full crisis mode. Legal consultations, PR strategies, quiet calls to sponsors, desperate attempts to stop the bleeding. And yet, it may already be too late. This time the cameras aren't under her control. The edits aren't hers to approve. And the narrative? It belongs to someone else now. As Jamie's podcast episode continued to go viral, whispers began to swirl of something more serious. Legal threats. Sources close to Meghan's camp say attorneys were drafted immediately. There was talk of defamation, image harm, NDA violations, even threats of litigation if Jamie didn't walk it back. But here's the catch. Jamie never signed anything. She wasn't under contract. And if her audio recordings are legit and unedited, Meghan's legal threats might not just be ineffective, they might backfire. Because in today's world, trying to silence someone often only makes the story louder. Meghan Markle has mastered the art of the pivot. From Hollywood actress to Duchess, from Duchess to podcaster, from podcaster to producer, from social justice voice to spiritual lifestyle guru, each version came with a new look, new mission, and a new emotional hook. But after Jamie's revelation, people started questioning the through line. Was it personal growth or market-tested reinvention? Was Meghan evolving or simply shifting personas to stay relevant? The Oprah interview was vulnerable. The Netflix doc was empowering. The podcast was raw, but now all of it feels rehearsed. While Hollywood distanced itself, social media went to war. Some loyal fans stood firm, saying Jamie was jealous, attention-seeking, or exaggerating. Others argued Meghan was simply playing the media game, like everyone else does. But the larger sentiment, that once strong public trust, was fracturing. And as trending hashtags like #FakeDuchess and #she scripted it surfaced, the conversation shifted from sympathy to skepticism. Even Meghan's biggest stans were starting to ask, if this is all real, why haven't we heard from her? Meghan's team is reportedly in full rebrand mode again. There are whispers of a new show, a book, a redemption arc, perhaps even a documentary about healing from betrayal. But the problem isn't just the fallout, it's the fatigue. The public is exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. And unless Meghan addresses Jamie's claims head-on, with proof, vulnerability, and honesty, any comeback may feel like just another performance. In Hollywood, authenticity is currency. And when someone who sold themselves as the most real person in the room is exposed for being anything but, it doesn't just sting, it burns the whole house down. Jamie Kern Lima didn't set out to destroy Meghan Markle, but her quiet, calm confession pulled the curtain back, and the world saw something it can't unsee. This isn't just a scandal, it's a shift, a reckoning, and the real story may just be beginning. Because the moment those raw tapes drop, there may be no comeback.